we'll call on people in turn. Our first speaker is going to be from the DPRK mission and then the Ambassador of Canada. I do note that the DPRK mission is quite assiduously recording the proceedings, the testimony of our witnesses. I certainly hope that testimony recording will be put to good use. Representative of the DPRK, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving the floor. At the first day, my delegation expressed the concern that the panel discussion against the Democratic People's Republic of Korea as a holding and this holy place, the United Nations. This confrontational event has nothing to do with genuine human rights. Rather than this product of political conspiracy of the United States and hostile forces in their attempt to overthrow our political and social system. The COI report is totally and severely distorting and faking up our real situation about human rights in DPRK by creating political confrontation. This human rights violation mentioned in the COI report cannot be allowed to exist in my country where the rights and fundamental freedom of our people are firmly guaranteed by regular system in practice. The report of the COI is not worth at all to discuss as official document in the United Nations due to its nature of political plot with running through the fabricated material of all kinds. Especially, we cannot overlook the fact that United States and hostile forces have been arbitrarily more and more in their attempt to create atmosphere of international pressure against the DPRK by releasing COI reports that are talking about, among other things, the so-called crimes against humanity and referral to international criminal justice mechanism through UN Security Council. Although DPRK remain in consistent principal position to solve all the issues through constructive dialogue and engagement, but we cannot compromise with this confrontational approach such as panel discussions. As mentioned just before Mr. Kirby, DPRK expressed our willingness to hold human rights dialogue and engage with the UN human rights bodies for technical cooperation. Also, we expect the positive response from the European Union and United Nations human rights bodies. So in conclusion, my delegation would like some questions with regard to the keynote speech made by Mr. Kirby. The first, even the Western mass media reported that the most of testimony made by defectors are forced by leading question. How do you comment about this one? The second, on the several occasions, also just before, you said that the Commission of Inquiry found crimes against humanity have been committed in North Korea based on the politics set at the highest level of state. So my question is that, what policy exactly do you mean? And which crime are committed in my country against humanity? The last question, did you ever read our Constitution? Also, did you ever read any report of the human rights report which the country published last September? The full title is the report of the DPRK Association Human Rights Studies. Thank you.
Thank you for those questions. If I could have the indulgence of the Ambassador of Canada, I might ask Mr. Kirby to respond to those straight away, since I think they will give us a better platform on which to proceed to other questions and commentary. Mr. Kirby, please.
Thank you, and I am glad that the representative of DPRK is present and has heard the testimony and is asking questions. I'm happy to answer the questions. The first was, mass media has said that the testimony was forced from witnesses by leading questions. I have spent 34 years as a judge. I know the difference between leading questions and what we call examination in chief, that is to say, non-leading questions, cross-examination and non-leading questions. I asked most of the questions during the Commission of Inquiry, and I specifically asked the questions in a non-leading form. Apart from anything else, that is the form of questioning that is most likely to get a response in the language of the witness themselves, and that is likely to be more powerful than cross-examination answers. In any case, Your Excellency can be satisfied about this yourself, not to rely on what media have said, some media, but to have a look yourself. In this country, you can have access to the internet. Google North Korea Commission of Inquiry, and you can sit for hour after hour after hour to see the witnesses, and I believe you will be convinced that the questions asked of them by myself and other commissioners were in non-leading form so that they could give the testimony, and their testimony is verbatim throughout this report. And it's why this is a readable report, because it contains the testimony of the victims. Secondly, you've asked why I said, or the Commission of Inquiry said, that there were several crimes against humanity which had been approved at the highest level of policy within the state. It is true that the Commission of Inquiry said that there were many crimes against humanity. Mark that we did not find genocide. We declined to find genocide, but we found many cases of crimes against humanity. They are all set out in the report, and the evidence on which the findings are based are set out in the report, and the report is available online, and I believe it has been translated into the Korean language. I again ask that this report in the Korean language version be made available to the people of North Korea so that they can decide whether the Commission proceeded fairly and secured evidence on which its findings are based. The third question was, did I read the Constitution and did I read the report of the Human Rights Institute in North Korea? I did not read the Constitution before I prepared this report in cover to cover. I did read such provisions of the Constitution as were made available to us. But common experience teaches that in some countries where great crimes are done against the people, a constitution and the words of a constitution are not as important as the actions of officials who defy the constitution. Sadly, our world has a number of instances where the constitution is a dead letter. I did read every page of the 93-page report of the Human Rights Institute of North Korea, and I think I must be one of relatively few people in the world that has read every page of that report. And as I have said, the report contains some statements which are fair comment. For example, criticisms of the United States and other countries for their own human rights record. My country, Australia, can be sometimes criticised for its human rights record. That's fair comment. But the report does not join fairly issue with the matters in this report. And I would urge once again that this report in its Korean language version be made available to the people of North Korea. if they have under your constitution a right of freedom of expression and freedom of free speech, then they have a constitutional right and also a right as a member state of the United Nations to have access to this report. And I again ask that that be done. And I ask you to withdraw the statement that witnesses like Mrs. Kim and Mr. Young are human scum who are bribed to give the testimony that they have given before this meeting here today. I do not believe that that is what happened, and I don't believe that the people present in this room and the states present in this room will believe that for a minute. And I again ask that you receive me in Pyongyang in order to debate freely and openly and respectfully before the audience of the people of North Korea this report which has been prepared for them.